So it's been 13 years, 1 month, and 2 weeks since I gave the wheel of my life to the Lord. But before I speak on the weeks leading up to that day, I want to go back for some added context. Grade 4 was a rough year for me. I struggled in school, I was teased, and became scared of what others thought of me. I shut down, stayed quiet, and tried to avoid anything that would bring attention to myself. This avoidance of vulnerability also extended towards my relationship with God. I was raised in a Christian home, grew up attending church and hearing the gospel, but I never truly recognized my need for a salvation. I remember thinking things like, I'm a good person. I don't do anything to hurt anyone. I don't do things like smoke and drink and party. Those are the kinds of people that need saving, not me. Sure, I'm not perfect, but certainly doing better than those people. I was so wrong in my thinking, arrogant and prideful. In my later teen and young adult years, a lot of my friends were Christians. I'd see them doing things like pray for people, preach in front of crowds, run youth groups, play on the worship team, and share the gospel with acquaintances and even strangers. The idea of me doing any of these things made my anxiety spike. There was absolutely no way I could ever do any of that. So I stayed on the sidelines. I figured I don't have to do any of those things. I can just sit on the sidelines in the shadows. So that's where I sat, on the fence, not avoiding Jesus and the gospel, but not fully embracing it either. This is when I heard the Lord speak to me clearly for the first time. I was driving with a friend of mine, and I heard this voice speak to me. He said that my friend was going to introduce me to someone who was going to be very important to my life. It was such a strong feeling that I felt like I had to tell him. But I didn't want to tell him because if it was God, I wanted to make sure I couldn't dismiss it afterwards by influencing the circumstance in telling him. So I told him, I think God spoke to me. He said something that involves you, but I don't want to tell you what it is and end up making you do what he told me. But if it happens, I'll let you know. The next day, I was going to go hang out with him again. He told me there was a church young adults group meeting at his house, so I went. I walk in the front door and look up the stairs, and I see a girl, my now wife, Stephanie. I hear the voice again. This time he says, "Come to me, and you will have her." I remember thinking, I will have her? How do I know I even want her? What if she's a weirdo? So that night, my friend introduces me to her and other people, but who cares about them? So I get to spend a bit of time chatting with her that night. And by the end of the night, I was thinking, okay, she seems pretty cool. From the time I spent talking with her, I could gather that she had a strong faith in God. I thought on what the voice said to me, "Come to me, and you will have her." I didn't want my relationship with God to be riding off of the notion of being with some girl. It wouldn't be fair to Steph. It wouldn't be fair to God. I wanted it to be more genuine than that. So I left it. If it happens, it happens. And I didn't tell my friend what happened either. Now, growing up, I never had much of a desire to sing. Singing usually involved singing in front of people, and that wasn't going to happen. But one night, something changed. I was working as a delivery driver at the time. I was out on some deliveries, and I just had this desire to be able to sing. It was like I couldn't contain it. It reached a point where I cried out in my car to God to give me a voice, and I would use it to give back to him. To this day, I can't believe I said those words at that time. Me singing in front of people. No, never. But I couldn't ignore the desire for it. It felt like I needed it to survive. I had this hunger to use my voice to serve God. So I started practicing. I had a lot of time in my car with deliveries to sing with the stereo. So I would record myself and listen back to it, and it was terrible. I sucked. I couldn't hit notes. I would be sharp on one note and flat on another. But I kept going. I would listen back to the recordings of myself and adjust, and I did this at least once a week for 2 years. I switched from primarily playing the electric guitar to the acoustic guitar simply because it was easier to sing along with it. I even tried getting into songwriting, though I didn't get very far. I had made one instrumental song, and when I tried to come up with lyrics, all I got were these words: "I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly." No matter how many times I went back to that song, I just couldn't add anything. But none of that ever went public. As far as anyone could tell, I was still sitting on the fence, afraid to step into any deeper relationship with God. Till one day, I was in this church building. I don't remember why I was here, but that day someone approached me. This person had seen and known me for a couple of years, probably at this point, but they had the courage to come and speak the truth to me. They told me, "You have been riding on the fence with God for as long as I've known you. You need to pick a side." I was taken aback. At the time, I thought, well, screw you. Fine, I'll pick a side. So I left. I stopped going to anything church-related, and slowly over time, my friend group began to change. I picked up smoking, I attended parties, and I would drink. I went traveling, playing guitar and singing, even in front of some people. But things really started to take a turn when marijuana came into my life. When I started smoking marijuana, the same thing would happen every time. I would hear the same voice that told me about Stephanie and to come to him. He would say, "This isn't the right path. You're going the wrong way. I have much better plans for you." To which I would reply, "Go away. I'm having fun." This continued for months. Every time I would hear the same warning, and every time I would push it away. Eventually, I thought maybe this wasn't a great idea, so I would try to quit. But I would fail again and again. And it seemed the more I failed, the more marijuana would get a tighter grip on me. I was full-on addicted. It was all I could think about. I would call up friends to hang out, not to see them, but because I knew they had it. It was around this time that I reconnected with someone I didn't expect, Stephanie. We seemed to really connect and started hanging out in group settings more often. Of course, those words I heard years ago rang in my ears, but a lot had changed since then. Steph was going to Bible college, and I, was going from hanging out with her and some friends one minute, then going and getting high with others the next. I didn't know it at the time, but Steph had started to develop feelings for me. She knew we were on very different paths, and she prayed. She asked the Lord to either take the feelings away or do something to change Brad's life. Enter the scariest night of my life. This night, I was smoking with some friends. As soon as I finished inhaling, I heard that voice once again. Though this time, all he said was, "I warned you." I began hallucinating. My friends around me started melting, and that night I got a glimpse of where the road he had warned me not to go down would lead. The road of continually rejecting God. It felt as though I was trapped in a dark room with the enemy. He was oh so happy. He was cursing at me, calling me worthless, gloating that he owned me as my entire world was spinning. But by far the most terrifying thing, I was crying out to God for help, and I could feel my cries like an extension of my physical body hit a ceiling and come right back down. Complete and utter separation. Needless to say, I woke up the next day and thinking, I'm done. I don't want any of this. But there was one problem. I've tried multiple times in the past to quit, and I failed every time. So I did the only thing I felt I could do. I turned to God. All those years of being afraid to be vulnerable towards God had melted away. I had reached the end of myself and had nowhere else to turn. I laid myself bare towards him, and this took the form of a song. The same song I had tried writing for years prior to no avail suddenly came together. The words flowed out, and I had finished writing it in about 10 minutes. Here are some of the lyrics. I'll spread my wings and I'll learn how to fly. Standing on the edge, this is it, do or die. Shortness of breath as my wings start to fail and I fall. Reach for me now, don't let go, my saving grace. I want to soar, never go back to that dreadful place. It's pulling me down as I lose my grip and I fall. Why I can't fight this thing, I don't know. I can't win this war. Please help me. It holds my life, holds my soul. I can't go on. I finished crying out to God, and nothing. So I pushed on. I guess I just got to try beat this thing, even though I knew I couldn't. Inevitably, about a week or two later, I'm offered the opportunity to smoke again. I can't resist. As I finish inhaling, I feel that same sense of fear as last time start to creep up. I say, please, please, no. As soon as I finish thinking that, the fear flees, like it couldn't stay. And I hear that same voice again. Sit down and listen. Yeah, okay. You have spent your whole life looking down and casting judgment upon people who smoke, drink, party, and do drugs. Look at you. You need me as much as they need me, and you have always needed me as much as they need me. You just see it now. God had shone a light on my pride. I was relying on my own good works, thinking this would somehow earn good status with God. But I was wrong. God's love isn't earned. I began to see the gospel for what it truly is, the good news. I had lied, stolen, looked at women with lust, taken the Lord's name in vain, the list goes on. I saw my need for a Savior like never before, and Jesus is that Savior. The wages of sin is death, And Jesus, the Son of God, not deserving death, willingly paid that death penalty in my place, rose again, and defeated death itself. He paid the fine I couldn't pay, so the good judge could legally dismiss my case. I am free. The debt is paid in full. He went through my whole life with me, showing me that he was there the whole way through, whether I saw it or not. My mind was blown. I saw it so clearly, and it made so much sense to me. But a couple hours into this, my rationale tried to kick in. This isn't real. I'm high. I'm going to wake up in the morning, you're going to be gone, and I'm still just going to be stuck here in this hell. To which he replied, no. I am going to be with you in this capacity, like this, until tomorrow evening when you go home and talk to your parents. I thought, why am I going to talk to my parents? What about? By the end of that night, I was absolutely drained. So the next morning, I wake up. Are you there? Nothing. See, I was just high. Great. I had to work this day. At this time, I was working at the Save On Foods just across the highway here. So I get up and I got ready. I get in my car to go to work, and I hear him again. He says to me, turn the radio to 95.3. So I go, okay. I turn it on. As soon as I turn on the radio, the first note of a song starts. The song is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. There were a number of things that spoke to me throughout the song, but none more than the chorus. Reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it. Release your inhibitions, feel the rain on your skin. No one else can feel it for you, only you can let it in. No one else can speak the words on your lips. Drench yourself in words unspoken. Live your life with arms wide open. Today is where your book begins. The rest is still unwritten. The night before, the Lord spoke to my pride. This morning, he was speaking to my fear of being vulnerable. My whole life, I was living my faith through other people, through my parents, and then through my friends. I was never willing enough to feel vulnerable and feel the rain on my own skin, as the song says. And he made that clear. It doesn't work that way. That's not how real relationships work. I need to have a personal relationship with God directly, not vicariously through others. By the time I got to work, I was drenched in tears. So after I composed myself, I went inside. Now, a couple weeks prior to this, our store received this old farm wagon that we were going to be using for a display. We had it stored in the back. It's about 9 feet long and about 5 feet wide. And before this day, every time I walked past it, I felt just something weird about it, like it was somehow connected to me. But it's just a wagon, I don't know. So this morning, I get inside, and my manager tells me, you know that wagon in the back? I want you to go to it, clean it up, and get someone to help you move it to the front storage area, because we're going to use it for a display this week. So I go down to the back, and I see this wagon, and it is just filthy, caked with dried mud. And I hear that voice again. This is you. Great. He said, let's clean you up. So I started cleaning this wagon. As I'm cleaning, I notice massive scars in the wood itself. I think about being addicted to marijuana, as well as other aspects of my life, thinking, I can't clean this. How am I supposed to clean this? He simply tells me, don't worry about those. I got those. So I finish cleaning, and I need to get someone to help me move it. I start pushing this wagon from the back, and another guy is steering it from the front. The voice says to me, give me the wheel of your life, and I will get you to where you are meant to be. These are his exact words. So we take this thing to the front storage area, and there's only a small space to store it. The guy I'm with asks, do you think it'll fit? I tell him, well, let's try it. We push it in there, and there's a 1-inch gap on all 3 sides. The guy I was with just looks at it and goes, huh, it's like it was meant to be there. I go to look at him like, what did you just say? And as I look at him, he starts to walk away, and he just reaches down, and he decides to pet a lawn statue that we had stored up there. I look down, and it's just a statue of an angel. At this point, I nearly fell to the floor. My heart was racing. Oh, God, you're real. This is too much. There's too many coincidences for this to just be coincidence. So to recap, I have this voice come to me the night before, strikes me in the core of my pride, and explains the gospel with a clarity I have never heard before. I try to brush it away because I'm just high, then tells me he's going to still be talking to me the next day. The next day, he's back. He gets me to turn on the radio to the song on a first note that perfectly speaks to my relationship or lack thereof with God. Starts using this wagon that I felt weird connection to days prior as an analogy for me. Tells me to give him the wheel of my life, and he'll get me to where I'm meant to be. The guy I'm with repeats that the wagon, me, is in a place where it's meant to be, and top it off with an angelic figure. God help you if you go through all that and still think it's nothing but hallucinations and coincidence. I don't think I got much work done that day. The rest of the day, I heard songs playing on the store's radio system that I had never heard before nor since, all speaking to whatever this voice was talking to me about. Work finally ends. Where am I going? You better believe I'm going home and I'm talking to my parents. I tell them everything that happened. After that day, everything changed. Addiction, gone. Set free. It was like I had new eyes. Colors appeared more vibrant in the days and weeks that followed. And the joy that filled my heart was like nothing I had ever experienced. I had felt God for myself. It was at this point where I remembered the promise he made to me years ago. Come to me and you will have her. I had come to the Lord. And it wasn't because of some girl. It was authentic. It was real. I had felt the rain on my own skin. So I went to Steph. I told her what happened. I asked her out. And she said, I need to think and pray about this. I thought, by all means, pray. He told me you're the one, and after what I just went through, I trust him to tell you the same. So she took a week. A week later, we met up at Piper's Lagoon. We talked. We agreed to start dating. And like some sort of cheesy rom-com, we hugged, and the BC Ferry let out a big horn blast to celebrate with us. So this is my story, at least some of it. It's that's really where my story begins. Because as you all know, I did end up using my voice on stage for God's purpose. But that's another story. I don't have time to get into all that happened after that and more, but I will say this. It's been 13 years, 1 month, and 2 weeks since I've given the wheel of my life to the Lord. And I can tell you with absolute confidence, I am exactly where I am meant to be. I invite the worship team up.